Dear friends, I hope you survived the first message around the global updates on immunization supply chains. That was by far the longest of the updates. The other three are going to be a lot shorter, I assure you. In fact, I'm going to combine the three in one message, audio message here. So the second update is around the global monitoring of indicators to track performance on key immunization supply chain performance. As background, subsequent to the SAGE session in November 2013, we were approached by the GVAP working group. This is a subgroup of members of SAGE and other partners that are supporting WHO with a monitoring framework of the Global Vaccine Action Plan, so the GVAP. In essence, this group helps with defining indicators, reviewing the data sources and methodologies, and all of this to be able to track global progress towards the various goals of the GVAP. The attached document in the email actually has the full list of indicators and each year the WHO Secretariat has to report progress on these indicators to the World Health Assembly. So the report that's attached is a Secretariat's report for 2013, and each year the WHO Secretariat has to produce updated reports, annual reports. In the initial set of indicators from the document I attached in my email, there was no specific indicator tracking country progress on immunization supply chain system strengthening. So given the awareness raising we achieved during the November SAGE and the April one, we were asked to propose an indicator to include in the list of the GVAP monitoring indicators. Of course, we responded favorably to this request since it provides an additional way to raise visibility, awareness, and interest in this topic. So together with UNICEF New York, and as part of the hub, we decided to focus on existing indicators collected through the WHO-UNICEF Joint Reporting Forum. And in February of this year, during the last SAGE working group meeting for the GVAP, the JRF indicators were presented and endorsed, and particularly around the indicator about national level stockout of vaccines. A presentation was made, and I've attached that in the email, and it provides more detail on why we decided to strengthen an existing indicator, even if it's not necessarily an ideal one. We thought it was better than trying to come up with a new one and therefore be asking countries to report on something different that may be more informative, but then we would suffer from having to try to set up something new. So in preparing for this presentation, we decided to actually analyze the information collected in the JRF on national level stockout of vaccines, and we discovered three things. The first is the data has actually been collected since 2005 and has never been formally analyzed, at least not that I know of. The other finding was the quality and completeness of the information isn't as good as it could be. It's not bad, but it could certainly be improved, and possibly because nobody's been really looking at it. The third finding is the information we analyzed, even if the accuracy and quality can't be verified, it does provide some interesting information for the global level, so it's definitely worth continuing to collect and analyze, and we certainly feel it would serve the purpose for the GVAP monitoring. So the next step is actually to submit an analysis that will be included in the next global indicator report for the GVAP for 2014. And so this will be the first time this immunization supply chain indicator will be included. And we'll be using the latest JRF data we have for 2013, but also provide a 2010 baseline number so that we have something to measure progress against. In practice, what does this mean? Well, it means that every year from now on until 2020, since that's the duration of the GVAP, we will need to report back on this indicator, and in doing so, it'd be good to establish a process where we can improve the completeness and the quality of the information and so on. So it'd be nice to establish this process with you in the coming year. At headquarter level, we've started thinking of ways to do this, and we'll continue to think of ways to do this and get back to you with more concrete and specific thoughts and ideas. But I just wanted to flag this to you as an update, and hope that in the future we can solicit some of your time to help us with the understanding of the data from your region, and possibly liaise with some of your countries for any questions of clarification. So this is, in a nutshell, the second update around GVAP monitoring, and including a new indicator in there on supply chain and logistics. Of course, once the analysis will be produced, and it's going to have to, some draft will be available in July, and so this month, I'll make sure to send it your way as background, and then we can engage in a discussion later on as to how can we start improving this information going forward and using the JRF's process. Moving on to the third update, the third email I've sent is about the WHO and UNICEF Joint Statement on Effective Vaccine Management, so the EVM. As many of you know, there's been an ongoing effort to prepare an updated joint statement, and this is updated from the one produced back in 2004 around the EVSM, so that was the Effective Vaccine Store Management Initiative. And at the time, this joint statement was signed by the directors of UNICEF Program and Supply Division, as well as the Director of Immunization here in WHO. For about a year now, and in line with promoting the comprehensive approach to EVM since 2010, we thought a revised joint statement was needed, and it's been in development, and we also expect that once it's finalized, this will be signed by the same directors of WHO and UNICEF Program and UNICEF Supply Divisions. This effort first began after getting regional office clearance on the production of this document based on the IVD document production process, so it's known as a DPAF. Most of you will have seen this circulated over a year ago, I think, to regional immunization advisors, and it probably trickled down to your level. And as subsequent to that, since we got the green light to go ahead with this document, we've produced various iterations, and most of you would have seen earlier versions of this document, and some of you have actually commented extensively on it, including during the EVM workshop in Turkey back in September of 2013, the IPAC meeting in Geneva back in October of 2013, the Vaccine Management Handbook workshop in Annecy last May of this year. So, the draft, and note that the draft document, which I've attached in the email, was the one that was endorsed at SAGE during its last meeting in April of this year. So by way of this email, I'm reaching out to inquire if you'd like to make any last comments on the attached, what's considered near final version of the EVM joint statement before our director's office at headquarters sends it to all regional advisors for final review and clearance. Note that this joint statement really describes at a very high level the cornerstones of the work that both WHO and UNICEF want to do as part of the global hub, the global immunization supply chain and logistics hub. In other words, this is the effort to expand the EVM agenda beyond the assessment phase and to a more holistic improvement planning process that includes leveraging funding opportunities from Gavi to resource the implementation plans, and so on and so forth. As such, this comprehensive EVM approach is squarely aligned and anchored within the Gavi Alliance supply chain strategy that I updated you on in an earlier message. Of course, this joint statement is more of an advocacy piece and something that can't exceed 5 pages. So such it doesn't really tell you concretely how to put this in motion and how to, at your level, in regional office level and country level, how to move forward on this comprehensive EVM approach. So we recognize that there's a deficiency here that we'll need to work on. But with support from EMRO right now, we will be piloting the very first EVM implementation planning workshop in Pakistan later on in the summer. This will be the jumping board, probably the sounding board too, or the platform upon which we will begin to develop more specific guidance materials around this comprehensive EVM approach. And we will be requesting resources from Gavi in the 2015 business plan process to help HQ put this in motion, but you should also be encouraged yourself to also consider how you might be budgeting activities around that for yourselves. In the meantime, if you have any final comments to make on this document, and really treating it as an advocacy piece, I'd appreciate if you could share these comments and inputs by in a couple of weeks, let's say by the 15th of July. After this date, we'll put in motion the next phase of what's called the no objection clearance, and that will be initiated by our director's office and going right to the regional offices for the next steps. Okay, so we've actually almost there. We've reached now the fourth update I wanted to share with you, and that's on the topic of oxytocin in the EPI cold chain. The background on this is that for some time now, various groups at the global level have been approaching EPI at headquarters regarding the use of the vaccine cold chain and logistics system for storing other time temperature-sensitive pharmaceuticals. These groups have primarily been sent to us through the UN Commission on Life-Saving Commodities for Women's and Children's Health. This is a commission that was formed in 2012 as part of the Every Woman, Every Child movement, spearheaded by Ban Ki-moon, the UN Secretary General. This commission has identified 13 priority health commodities to scale up in low and middle income countries. And of these 13 commodities for women and child health, one of them is oxytocin, whose shelf life and potency can be extended for much longer if it could be stored within 2 to 8 degrees, particularly at the lowest levels of the supply chain. So I'm referring to mainly health center or last mile facilities. So these groups first approached us asking to see if there was a way we could revert the WHO policy that prevented other temperature-sensitive pharmaceuticals to be stored in the vaccine cold chain. So we indicated to them that in fact there is no specific policy on this. There is no mention of in any of the WHO guidelines or documents that actually forbids the storage of other temperature-sensitive pharmaceuticals in the vaccine cold chain. And we actually shared documents, including the Immunization in Practice, that actually indicates that if other products need to be stored in the vaccine refrigerator, these need to be clearly labeled and organized in the fridge and so on and so forth. So in fact, there isn't a rule or a policy against it, but somehow the practice in the field seems to suggest that there is resistance in doing so. Although this only partly addresses their concern, they requested that WHO and UNICEF share their perspectives on how EPI cold chain could be used for other time and temperature sensitive pharmaceuticals. So as the hub, we produced a 2-page document in response to this, and that's the one I've attached in the email. And I'm sharing it with you just both for information, but also to see if you have any comments or concerns about that. Note that the intent is to have this statement placed on both agency websites as a reference statement to support the UN Commission on Life-Saving Commodities. As you'll see from the document, it's really about clarifying the ambiguity that exists on current policies and practices related to the use of the vaccine cold chain for storing any other time and temperature sensitive products. So it's not a statement that is actually making any recommendations or stating any policy. It's just there to inform that as part of a collaboration with the UN Commission on Life-Saving Commodities, EPI is going to help explore how guidance can be developed, but only once we've documented some specific in-country experiences where oxytocin has been stored in the vaccine cold chain, having drawn the lessons learned and the benefits and reviewing the benefits and the challenges and so on and so forth. So before we actually go towards a policy recommendation, if we end up going for one, which is a question mark, we would need to be doing a fair amount of operations research to bring this to the table. So that is really what this joint statement is about, is just informing that firstly, there is no policy saying you can't put anything else in the vaccine fridge, at least not a formal policy, even though maybe that's what's happening in the field. And the other is that we're going to explore whether having such a policy is a good idea, but only after generating the right evidence for that. So please, if you have any comments on this short document, do send them to me before the end of July. I appreciate it.